Welcome to Fast Effect Double Speed Magic the Gathering from ELD's Time Ball Games. We have Josh on a Dimir Shadow deck versus Michael on Jeskai. A aggro control versus a much harder control list. Josh is going to be presenting threats, and we'll see if Michael can deflect them all. Thoughtseize grabs a Swords to Plowshares. Incredibly strong card versus Shadow. You always have to be concerned about as it undoes your life lost. Shadow, a deck that actually trades its life with Thoughtseize, Fetch Lands, Shock Lands, Force of Will, Snuff Out, Street Wraith, you name it, tons of cards to lower their life total and make Death Shadow one of the most efficient creatures ever printed. 1 mana for a 12/12, potentially a 13/13 with the advent of Dress Down towards the Plowshares. Really just a huge problem, and it is currently sidelined. Now, of course, Prismatic Ending can take out a Death Shadow, but it doesn't make your deck's Death Shadows useless. Let's see here. Forcing, Pitching Force. This is a hard pass from Josh. Trying to keep this Death Shadow alive. Does he have a way of lowering the life total even further? You'd hope so. If you're forcing, pitching Force of Will, you are trying to get this game over in a hurry. Oh, nothing else. So Murktide. This one gets a Force of Will back from Michael. And Humility. See why Murktide would have been such a problem. Humility makes all creatures lose all abilities and become 1/1 creatures. Murktide would have had a whole bunch of counters on it, so even though it would have been a 1/1, it still would have had counters, making it even larger. Prismatic Ending found off of Narset. Ooh, and there's a Days Undoing waiting in the wings here, ready to go. Michael's down to just 4. 4 more turns is an eternity on this board. Brainstorm in response. That will not do, as Narset will make him put the 2 cards back on top of the library. I presume that was just to see what the top card was. Would have been a catastrophic punt otherwise, as Force plus blue card at least keeps the game going there. 4 more turns against a deck like this is a really long time. Thoughtseize again. Ooh, double Days Undoing in the opener. You have Brainstorm, Teferi, and a Swords to Plowshares. Grabs the Brainstorm, trying to play with perfect information for as long as possible. Days Undoing with Narset or Teferi, or both. Such a powerful card. Be able to cast that during your opponent's draw step. Devastating. They'd already drawn a card for turn. Have Teferi and have upticked him with a Narset on board. That's pretty much the dream. Similar to the old play patterns of Vintage back when Keeper was the best deck. Control the game and then eventually mind twist your opponent. Well, this gives you the ability to do that with an upside of drawing 7 cards on top of it. Absolutely outrageous card advantage. Completely annihilating your opponent's entire hand while drawing 7 fresh ones for yourself. Say it is very fun. Is that a Court of Cunning? I think it might be. Got a card that I don't know. Days stopped the Pyroblast. Oh, it is Court of Cunning. All right, there we go. So Days been very good here. Stopped a Pyroblast, so it actually did enter, and then Prismatic Ending attempted to get rid of it. And that was met with another Daze, so back-to-back defense, and now a Death Shadow. So the noose is tightening on both ends here. I guess the Mirror Enforcer, Mirror Retriever, is acting as the Monarch. And a Murktide Regent. It is all on the board here. Death Shadow, a Murktide, Horde of Cunning. Have a Swords to Plowshares would not be enough to get rid of both. Gaining 8 life. Josh would be at 11, so Death Shadow would survive. I mean, I think you're probably just throwing this out. Oh, we got a Teferi. Now, this would bounce one of these threats. That would not be sufficient. Needs to draw a white source. Yeah, I guess if he's playing the Teferi, he's going to bounce one of these and then hope to hit a white source and hit the other one. Got to play the routes. That is not a white source. That's a wrap. On to game number 3. Murktide is such a strong finisher for these aggro control strategies. I was mentioning just the redundancy in these decks, where the point where Ponder might actually be a better card than Brainstorm control list right now, which is a really interesting thought. I'm not inclined to accept that quite yet without playing that style of deck for a while, but when you've got 8 copies of, Swords to Plowshares, Prismatic Ending, you've got Planeswalkers that serve similar roles in terms of hitting an empty board and generating an advantage. So many different counter spells, Minor Misstep, Force of Negation, Force of Will. Very interesting to at least try and think about it from that perspective. It's like, wow, that is pretty crazy. I still feel like Brainstorm has to be the better card. Does cash out cards from your hand, but that is with the caveat that you have a shuffle, of course. Brainstorm plus Fetchland, still very high in my books. But we've got an empty board here. There's a Supreme Verdict in hand. Michael double fetching. Grabbing basics to begin with. And Teferi, so 2 basic planes. He's got those online for the Supreme Verdict. Got the blue, so any other land will allow him to cast the Supreme Verdict. Now, that does get stopped by Daze, which pretty violent. Spending 3 mana just to see it refuted for 0 mana. Only 1 card as well. At least with Force of Will, or Force of Negation, they're going down a card. Daze lining up extremely well there. Now, 1 mana open for this Narset. This is a significant turn. This is exactly what you don't want as a shadow player. Your opponent gaining not only card advantage, but card selection. Narset was just drawing a random card, it would still be unbelievably good, but the fact that it's a double dig through time, looking at 4 cards, picking the best amongst them, it's also broken up across multiple turns as well, so depending on how the board changes, they actually... another Narset. Depending on how the board changes or the game state changes, you might actually make a different decision than you would have if you made both of those activations in the same turn. It really is incredibly strong. A Dothy Voidwalker, previously seen. This guy is a little bit harder to remove than some of the other threats, but not by much. Just dodging Pyroblast. Towards the Plowshares, still incredibly good versus everything in this deck. And there's a Murktide Regent. Five counters. It's a full boat. Knows the sword is there. We've got a minor misstep, but there is a Pyroblast in hand, so this Murktide is not going to stick around for long. Michael actually electing to untap and fire off another Swords, retaining the Pyroblast if need be. And Josh actually just going to scoop it up there in face of the Narset. He uses a Ponder to take a look and decides that it's not worth continuing. Kate, I'm not sure if that was forgetting about the card draw or not. I'd imagine so. That's interesting. It is often correct to fire off a Ponder underneath a Narset just to have that card selection. Of course, you can still shuffle. You're just not going to draw any of those cards till your next turn. But Jeskai in very, very commanding position at that point, facing down a Pyroblast and a Supreme Verdict is not where Death Shadow wants to be. You are not going to win many from that position. Thank you for watching. For more magic from ELD's Time Vault games, be sure to subscribe and check out more videos just for you over here.